In 1891, at Boston's Mercy General Hospital, patients entered Ward 7 alive and left in wooden boxes. But here's the terrifying truth. Many were still breathing when the coffin lids were nailed shut. The locals called it the Coffin Ward. Officially, it was Ward 7 of Mercy General Hospital, a towering brick building that cast long shadows over Boston's South End. But the patients who entered those heavy oak doors knew the difference. They could smell death in the air, thick as fog rolling off the harbor. Dr. Cornelius Blackwood ran Ward 7 with the precision of a funeral director. Tall and gaunt, with hollow cheeks and fingers stained yellow from carbolic acid, he moved through the ward like a specter. His eyes, pale and cold as winter ice, seemed to measure each patient not for recovery, but for coffin dimensions. The year was 1891, and medical science was still groping in the dark. Anesthesia was crude, antiseptics barely understood, and the line between life and death was thinner than spider's silk. But even by the brutal standards of the time, Ward 7 was different. It was where hope went to die. Margaret O'Sullivan arrived at Ward 7 on a bitter February morning, carried in by her two sons. The 43-year-old seamstress had been fighting consumption for months, her lungs rattling like autumn leaves in the wind. Her family had scraped together their last dollars for her admission, believing the hospital would save her. They were wrong. The ward itself was a monument to despair. 24 iron beds lined the walls, their black frames resembling prison bars. The windows were too high to see through, letting in just enough gray light to illuminate the suffering within. The floors, made of rough pine planks, were stained dark with fluids best left unnamed. What made Ward 7 truly horrific wasn't the conditions. It was Dr. Blackwood's revolutionary approach to patient care. He had developed what he called predictive mortality assessment. Simply put, he decided who would die before they actually did. Sarah Fleming, a young nurse who worked the ward for 3 weeks before fleeing in terror, later testified to city investigators. Her words, recorded in the Boston Municipal Archives, paint a picture that defies belief. Dr. Blackwood would examine patients on Monday mornings, Fleming recalled, her voice shaking even months later. He would check their pulse, look at their color, and then mark their charts with a black X. Those marked patients would be moved to the corner beds. By Friday, they were always dead. Always. The corner beds. That's where the true horror lived. 6 beds arranged in an L shape at the ward's far end, separated from the others by a thin cotton curtain. Patients called it the death corner. They begged not to be moved there, knowing what it meant. But here's what chills the blood. Fleming's testimony reveals that patients marked for death didn't die naturally. They were helped along. Hit that notification bell if you're brave enough to hear more dark medical history. Dr. Blackwood's methods were as precise as they were deadly. According to Fleming's testimony and hospital records discovered decades later, patients in the corner beds received a special comfort treatment. This involved increasing doses of laudanum, a liquid opium mixture, administered every 4 hours. The official cause of death was always respiratory failure. The unofficial truth was murder disguised as mercy. Margaret O'Sullivan lasted 5 days in Ward 7. Her eldest son, Patrick, visited daily, watching his mother grow weaker with each passing hour. On Thursday evening, she was moved to a corner bed. Patrick begged Dr. Blackwood to explain why. "Your mother is transitioning," Blackwood replied, his voice as emotionless as granite. "We're making her comfortable in her final hours." But Margaret wasn't dying. Not yet. Patrick could see it in her eyes, still bright with life. He could hear it in her voice, weak but clear when she whispered his name. She was sick, yes, but far from death's door. That night, Margaret received her first dose of comfort treatment. By morning, her breathing had slowed dramatically. Her skin had taken on the waxy pallor that Dr. Blackwood associated with impending death. Another dose at noon, another at 4. By evening, Margaret O'Sullivan was unconscious, but still alive. That's when the most horrifying part of Ward 7's routine began. Dr. Blackwood performed what he called death verification at 6 o'clock each evening. He would check each corner bed patient for vital signs. But according to Fleming's testimony, his examinations were deliberately superficial. A quick listen to the chest, a brief check for pulse. Sometimes he would hold a mirror to their lips, looking for the fog of breath. The problem was, Dr. Blackwood wanted to find death, not life. His examinations lasted no more than 30 seconds per patient. He missed faint heartbeats. He ignored shallow breathing. He declared patients dead who were merely unconscious. On Friday evening, February 13, 1891, Dr. Blackwood pronounced Margaret O'Sullivan dead. Her body was wrapped in a canvas shroud and wheeled to the hospital's makeshift morgue in the basement. There, it would await pickup by the city's pauper burial service. But Margaret O'Sullivan wasn't dead. The hospital's morgue was little more than a stone-walled cellar beneath the main building. Bodies were placed on wooden tables, covered with sheets, and left until burial. The temperature was cold enough to slow decay, but not cold enough to kill. Thomas Fletcher, the hospital's night janitor, made his rounds every evening at midnight. His job was to check the morgue for rats and ensure the gas lamps remained lit. On the night of February 13th, he heard something that would haunt him for the rest of his life.
Scratching, faint but persistent, coming from beneath one of the shrouds. Fletcher's hands shook as he approached the sound. He lifted the corner of the canvas and found Margaret O'Sullivan's face. Her eyes wide with terror, her fingernails bloody from clawing at the fabric. She was alive, conscious, and trapped in what was meant to be her burial shroud. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Help me." Fletcher carried Margaret back to Ward 7, bursting through the doors with a terror-stricken face. But instead of celebration at this miraculous recovery, he found Dr. Blackwood waiting with an expression of cold fury. The patient was declared dead, Blackwood said, blocking Fletcher's path to the beds. "Return her to the morgue immediately." "But sir, she's alive. She spoke to me. She's having post-mortem muscle spasms, a common occurrence, nothing more." What happened next reveals the full scope of Dr. Blackwood's depravity. According to Fletcher's later testimony, the doctor took Margaret O'Sullivan back to the morgue himself. This time, he made sure she wouldn't wake up again. The laudanum dose was 10 times larger than any medical text recommended. Margaret O'Sullivan died for the second time that night, but this time, Dr. Blackwood made certain of it. This wasn't an isolated incident. Hospital records, discovered during a 1923 renovation, revealed that Ward 7 had an impossible mortality rate. Of 847 patients admitted between January 1891 and December 1892, 623 died. That's a death rate of over 73%, far higher than any other ward in the hospital or any comparable facility in Boston. More disturbing still, the records show that many patients declared dead were buried within hours of their supposed death, violating city ordinances that required a 24-hour waiting period. Dr. Blackwood had arrangements with 3 local funeral homes that would collect bodies at any hour, no questions asked. The investigation began in March 1892, triggered by Sarah Fleming's testimony to city health officials. She had fled Ward 7 after witnessing what she called systematic murder disguised as medical care. Her accusations were initially dismissed as the fantasies of a hysterical woman, but pressure from families of deceased patients forced officials to act. What investigators found defied their worst expectations. In addition to the suspicious mortality rates and rushed burials, they discovered Dr. Blackwood's personal notes hidden in his office safe. These journals, written in his careful handwriting, revealed the true purpose of Ward 7. Dr. Blackwood wasn't trying to heal patients. He was studying the dying process itself. His notes described detailed observations of patients in their final hours. He recorded heart rates, breathing patterns, skin color changes, and muscle responses. He noted how different doses of laudanum affected the speed of death. He measured the exact time between his declaration of death and actual biological death. Ward 7 wasn't a hospital ward. It was a laboratory, and the patients were unwilling test subjects. Dr. Blackwood disappeared before investigators could arrest him. Some say he fled to Canada. Others believe he changed his name and continued practicing medicine elsewhere. The truth died with him. Mercy General Hospital closed Ward 7 permanently in April 1892. The beds were removed, the windows bricked over, and the room sealed. It remained that way until the building was demolished in 1967. But the horror didn't end with the ward's closure. During the demolition, workers made a discovery that sent shockwaves through Boston's medical community. Hidden beneath the floor of the former Ward 7 were 23 small wooden boxes, each containing detailed medical instruments and vials of various chemicals. Analysis revealed that the vials contained concentrated laudanum, chloroform, and several other substances known to be fatal in large doses. The instruments included syringes, scalpels, and devices whose purpose remains unclear to this day. Most disturbing of all was a leather-bound notebook found with the boxes. Written in Dr. Blackwood's handwriting, it contained names, dates, and what appeared to be experimental results. Margaret O'Sullivan's name appeared on page 47, along with detailed notes about her dual death process. The notebook listed 312 names total. Cross-referencing with hospital records confirmed that all 312 had died in Ward 7 during Dr. Blackwood's tenure. Today, the site where Mercy General once stood is occupied by a small park in Boston's South End. There's no memorial, no historical marker, nothing to indicate the horrors that once took place there. The city prefers to forget Ward 7 ever existed. But the questions remain. How many hospitals had their own versions of Ward 7? How many doctors like Cornelius Blackwood used their authority to experiment on helpless patients? How many people were declared dead while their hearts still beat? In an era before strict medical oversight, before patient rights, before modern death verification procedures, the line between healing and killing was often drawn by individual doctors with their own moral compass. Some pointed toward life, others, like Dr. Blackwood, pointed toward darkness. The patients of Ward 7 trusted their doctor to save them. Instead, he studied them as they died. They came seeking healing and found only horror. They entered as human beings and left as experimental data. Perhaps the most chilling aspect of the Ward 7 story isn't the murders themselves, but how easily they were covered up. For over a year, Dr. Blackwood operated with complete freedom, his actions unquestioned by hospital administration. It was only the courage of a single nurse that exposed the truth. How many other Ward 7s existed in hospitals across America? How many doctors like Cornelius Blackwood practiced their dark medicine in the shadows of respectability? We'll never know the full scope of medical horror that lurked behind hospital walls in the late 1800s. What we do know is this: the trust between patient and doctor, sacred as it should be, has been broken before. Ward 7 stands as a reminder that medicine without morality becomes something far more sinister than disease itself. The next time you walk past an old hospital building, remember Margaret O'Sullivan and the others who trusted their lives to healers who chose to study death instead. Their stories deserve to be remembered, not buried beneath layers of institutional shame and historical amnesia. In the end, Dr. Blackwood's greatest crime wasn't murder. It was the betrayal of the fundamental promise that doctors make to do no harm. He turned healing into killing, hope into horror, and medicine into murder.